At my parents' anniversary dinner, my sister raised her glass, smirked, and asked, "So, Morgan, what does it feel like being the family's biggest disappointment?" Everyone laughed, except me. I set my wine down, smiled, and said, "Let me show you how the family's disappointment has been covering your bills for the past 5 years." The room froze, eyes widened, silence fell heavier than the chandelier above us. That was the moment I broke the script, the moment I stopped letting them use me. My name is Morgan Ellis, and this is the story of how I stood up to the family that never really saw me. I'm Morgan Ellis, and I've spent most of my life being the dependable one, the achiever, the background blur in every family photo. At 38, I live in Seattle, work as a product director at a thriving tech firm, and own a small but elegant condo with a view of the water. No husband, no kids, just a wall full of certifications and framed awards that no one in my family has ever asked about. Success came because I had to make something of myself. I didn't have the luxury of being Claire Ellis, my older sister, the dazzling golden-haired princess of our family. Claire was always special. You could feel it at every birthday, every holiday, every casual Sunday brunch. She didn't walk into a room she arrived. Even now, at 41, she commands attention effortlessly, like she's owed the spotlight. Growing up, our parents made no secret of who the favorite was. Claire had shelves full of ballet trophies and homemade tiaras. My victories, spelling bees, math tournaments were mentioned in passing, sometimes forgotten entirely. I remember once bringing home a certificate for being top of my class. My father glanced at it and said, "Nice work, kiddo," before asking Claire about her upcoming cheerleading tryouts. The imbalance was constant. But as a child, you adapt. You learn not to expect too much. But one moment defined everything. I was 10, Claire 13, when our cat, Meaty, went missing. She was a small tabby with a white stripe down her nose and Claire's favourite baby. I adored Meaty, too. I fed her, brushed her, even let her sleep at the foot of my bed when Claire forgot about her. But that day, Claire came home from school, didn't see Mitty on her windowsill, and started screaming. "Morgan, what did you do?" I froze. "I didn't do anything. She was here this morning. She's gone. You left the door open. I bet you never pay attention. I hadn't even been home yet." By dinner, Claire was in tears at the table, refusing to eat, sobbing into her spaghetti. My mum rubbed her back like she was a grieving widow. Then came the line that stuck with me forever. "Claire is sensitive," my mother said sharply when I tried to defend myself. "You should have known better than to leave doors open." "But I didn't. That's enough," my father added tiredly. "We're dealing with a lot right now." Claire glanced at me from across the table, eyes red, lips curled in quiet satisfaction. Meaty showed up the next morning, purring outside the back door. No apology was ever given, no correction issued, but the damage was done. That moment I realized something unspoken had shifted. Claire had learned that with a few tears and accusations, she could weaponize sympathy. I, on the other hand, had learned something else entirely. In my family, truth mattered less than narrative, and I was never the one writing it. From that point on, things were subtle, but different. My parents didn't punish me. Not exactly. But I noticed how often Claire's stories were taken at face value, how my voice would trail off when I realized no one was really listening, how I began apologizing even when I hadn't done anything wrong. It became muscle memory. Don't rock the boat, don't contradict Claire. And maybe, just maybe, you'll be noticed in a good way someday. Spoiler, I wasn't. That's why I poured myself into school, into achievements, because they were quantifiable. They couldn't be taken from me. Straight A's, early college admission, a full-ride scholarship across the country. All those things became my armor. But armor is heavy. And even when it protects you, it doesn't feel like love. By the time I graduated from college, I had crafted an entire life around proving I was worth something, even if no one at home noticed. I accepted a job offer from a rising tech company in Seattle before I even walked across the stage at graduation. Within 6 years, I was leading product development teams, making 6 figures, and mentoring interns who reminded me a little too much of my younger self. Quiet, overlooked, but quietly burning with ambition. Back home, nothing had changed. Claire had dropped out of college after 2 semesters. She got married young to Brian, a decent enough guy who seemed perpetually exhausted, and had 2 sons, Tyler and Owen. I sent gifts when each boy was born. I started contributing to their college funds before they even turned 5. No one asked me to. I just wanted to help. Claire and Brian were always in temporary hardship, a broken-down car, a last-minute mortgage crisis, a late tuition payment. It always started with a casual text from Claire. "Hey sis, any chance you could spot us 500? Brian's check got delayed and Tyler needs cleats." All from Mum. "Claire's been so stressed lately, sweetie. If you could help, I know it would mean the world." I helped again and again, $800 here to $200 there. I paid for their groceries when Brian lost a job, covered their rent during a rough winter, paid half the tuition for Owen's private preschool because Claire said he wasn't thriving in public school. No one ever said thank you, not really. It was just expected, like I was some bottomless, guilt-free ATM. The emotional math was simple. I had the money, they didn't, so I should give. I told myself this was what family did. I believed that if I gave enough, helped enough, one day someone might say, "Morgan, we appreciate you. We're proud of you." They didn't. The real twist came when a co-worker of mine, Jess, bumped into Claire at a community fundraiser in Portland. Jess had recently moved from Seattle and recognized Claire from my Instagram. "Hey," she told me over coffee the next week, "I think I met your sister at that literacy gala. Claire, right? She's funny. She said you were like super logical, kind of robotic, that you don't really do emotions, but you're great at spreadsheets." I stared at her, my coffee cooling in my hands. She said, "What?" Jess hesitated. I don't think she meant it harshly, more like you're the brain and she's the heart of the family. The brain and the heart. Funny how the heart of the family never skipped a beat when asking me for money or when dismissing me in front of others. I sat with that for days. At first I brushed it off. Claire probably didn't mean anything, but the more I thought about it, the more it cut. I wasn't even upset that she'd said I was unemotional. I was upset because she'd said it to a stranger, someone who didn't know me, someone she could influence with her version of who I was. And just like that, a thread pulled loose. I started replaying every interaction. How my mother only called when Claire needed something. How my father had once said, "We don't worry about you, Morgan. You've always got it together," as if being competent disqualified me from needing care. I wasn't family because of who I was. I was family because of what I provided. And slowly I began to realize something devastating. My place in this family wasn't rooted in love. It was rooted in utility. So long as I kept giving, I was tolerated. The moment I stopped, would I even be invited to the next holiday dinner? That's when something inside me shifted. Not a lightning bolt, but a quiet turning, like a door in my chest clicking shut. I didn't say anything, not yet. But I knew a reckoning was coming. It always does. Planning my parents' 45th anniversary celebration should have been a joy. I wanted it to be perfect. An evening full of warmth, nostalgia, and maybe, just maybe, a rare moment where I felt like I truly belonged. I booked a private room at Cleats, an upscale Italian restaurant my parents adored since their honeymoon days. I curated the menu myself, my father's favourite risotto, my mother's obsession with lemon chicken, the right wine pairing for each course. I even commissioned a bakery to create a custom cake with edible gold foil and a sugar-sculpted version of their wedding photo. Every detail mattered because I needed this night to matter. 2 weeks before the dinner, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Hi, sweetheart," she began, voice light, almost rehearsed. "I was just going over the guest list with Claire. And oh, by the way, she might reach out to you. She's having a bit of a rough patch again." I closed my eyes. What kind of rough patch? Well, you know how Brian's hours got cut again and the mortgage payment's coming up. She hasn't asked for anything yet, but I thought I'd give you a heads up. Of course she did. I stayed quiet long enough that my mum filled the silence. Just consider it if she does ask. The boys have been so stressed with school and Claire's doing her best. I bit down on the urge to scream. This wasn't a one-time thing. This was the dance. Claire makes a mess. Mum downplays it. I pay to fix it. She hasn't called yet, I said flatly. Let's wait and see. Oh, of course. Just wanted to let you know. We're so excited for the dinner, honey. You've done so much. Really? It would have meant something if it weren't always followed by another request. After we hung up, I immediately called Rachel, my best friend since college. Rachel had watched this family pattern unfold for over a decade, with increasing horror. Let me guess, she said as soon as she picked up. Claire needs money again. Preemptively, apparently, Rachel sighed. That woman has more rough patches than a quilt. I laughed in spite of myself. It's just exhausting. I'm planning this huge dinner, and still somehow I'm the backup plan for Claire's bills. You're not the backup plan, Morgan. You're the only plan they've ever had that worked. I hated how true that sounded. Then came the real gut punch. You know, Rachel added slowly, I don't think I ever told you this, but I saw Claire at the Nordstrom flagship last year. She was at the designer bag counter. What? Yeah, she was buying a YSL clutch on a platinum credit card. I remember because she waved it around like a prize. Wait, was that around October? Rachel paused. Yeah. Why? Because that's when she told me Brian's car broke down and they needed help covering Christmas presents for the boys. I wired her 2,000. There was silence on the line. Then Rachel said very softly, Morgan, I think it's time. Time for what? To stop being the family ATM. I exhaled, my throat tight. I know, I wanted this dinner to be different. I wanted to feel like more than the wallet. Rachel's voice was steady. Then make it different. Start with this. If Claire asks, say no. The word no felt foreign, clunky. But somewhere deep in my chest, something sparked, a small dangerous thing. Hope. Saying no should be simple, one syllable, a tiny word. But for me, it felt like trying to speak underwater. After my call with Rachel, I stood in front of the mirror that night, arms crossed, practicing. I'm not in a position to help right now. No, Claire, I can't do that. I'm focusing on my own financial goals at the moment. I hope things improve, but I can't be the solution this time. Each phrase came out stiff, like I was rehearsing lines in a language I didn't quite speak. I tried soft, firm, neutral, even cold, but no matter how I said it, it felt like I was doing something wrong, like I was being cruel. That's the power of guilt when it's been nurtured since childhood. You grow up believing no is a betrayal instead of a boundary. I spent the next few evenings working on a very different kind of gift. Not cash, not a dinner, not another invisible sacrifice. I had digitized hundreds of family photos over the years, scanning slides, restoring torn prints, organizing folders by year. I pulled the best ones into a digital frame, adding captions, transitions, and even voice recordings from relatives I'd secretly interviewed. It was a timeline of my parents' life together. From their wedding day to our awkward childhood vacations to their gay-haired strolls in the garden behind their house. It had taken me months. I hadn't told anyone. The day before the dinner, I wrapped it in gold tissue paper and tied it with a velvet ribbon. I looked at it sitting on my table and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Not pride in being useful, not pride in fixing someone's mess, just pride in creating something meaningful. That afternoon, as I triple-checked the seating chart and emailed the restaurant coordinator, a message popped up on my phone. Claire Ellis. Hey, can we chat privately after the dinner? Just us, it's important. When I stared at the screen, my stomach turning. There it was. I didn't respond right away. I didn't need to. The intention was clear. Butter me up in public. Drop the ask in private. She'd done it before. Birthdays, holidays, graduations. Anytime emotions ran high and boundaries got blurry, Claire knew how to pounce. I typed, then erased, then typed again. Me, we'll see how the night goes. It was the most non-committal sentence I could craft, but it gave me time to build my wall. I knew what was coming. She'd bring up the boys, maybe mention Brian's pay cut, say something vague like, "I hate to ask, but you're the only one we can count on." And this time, I would say no. I rehearsed the moment like a scene in a play. The restaurant, the low lighting, her hopeful eyes, the silent expectation, then my voice, calm and measured. "I'm sorry, Claire, but I can't help you this time." What would she do? Cry, guilt trip me, storm out? It didn't matter. I wasn't going to fund her lifestyle anymore. I'd done enough. That night, I laid out my dress, chose simple earrings, and painted my nails a soft, neutral pink. I looked in the mirror, tilting my head. Not bad, I thought. Not invisible, either. As I slipped the gift into my tote, my phone buzzed again. "Claire Ellis, really looking forward to tonight. Hope you saved room for dessert." It was meant to sound casual, sisterly, but all I heard was a wolf smoothing its fur before the kill. "Tonight," I whispered to myself, locking the door behind me. "If war breaks out over tiramisu, so be it." I arrived at Cleats nearly 45 minutes early. The dining room was still quiet, the golden light from the chandeliers giving everything a soft, romantic glow. The private area I'd reserved sat tucked in the back, a long, elegant table draped in ivory linen, surrounded by high-backed chairs and soft candlelight. The place cards I'd printed weeks ago sat neatly in front of each setting. Double-checked the custom menu I'd chosen and confirmed with the staff that the anniversary cake was chilling in the kitchen. Perfect. When my parents arrived, I saw something flicker across my mother's face. Surprise, maybe even awe. My father looked around the room, nodding in approval. "Morgan," he said, taking my hand. "You did all this?" I smiled. "Yes, I wanted tonight to feel special." My mother's eyes watered as she pulled me into a brief hug. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Thank you." For a second, it felt like everything I'd wanted. Then Claire walked in. She arrived fashionably late, 20 minutes past the invitation time, wearing a champagne-coloured cocktail dress that shimmered under the lights, her blonde hair in loose waves, and a dramatic red lip that screamed, "I want every eye on me." Brian trailed behind her, awkwardly carrying a shiny gift bag. "Sorry, traffic was a nightmare," she announced, not even pretending to apologise. "And parking. Don't even get me started." My mother beamed. "Darling, you look stunning." Claire laughed. Well, I couldn't let the old folks outshine me. I stayed by the drink table, pouring wine for everyone, watching as Claire kissed both our parents on the cheeks, then dramatically presented the gift bag. "2 tickets for a week-long cruise," she declared, holding up the envelope like she was hosting a game show. "The Mediterranean. You two deserve luxury." My father blinked. "That's quite something, Claire." I watched his face carefully. He was touched, but also confused. Claire and Brian were supposedly in a financial pinch. Where had the money come from? I already knew. Installments, credit, promises she couldn't keep. Still, the room applauded. My parents gushed. Claire basked in it. I took a sip of my wine. Later, as guests began settling in and laughter filled the air, I stepped into the hallway to make a quick call to the restaurant manager about the timing for the main course. As I turned to head back in, I paused outside the door when I heard Claire's voice low and smug. "Trust me," she whispered. "With everyone here, she won't say no. Public pressure works every time." Brian mumbled something in reply. "Claire again, just smile and wait. She's like a vending machine. Push the right button and out comes the money." My chest tightened. I pressed myself against the wall, heart pounding. The words sliced clean. I wasn't her sister. I was her mark. I inhaled deeply, forcing calm. This wasn't the time to react. Not yet. Back at the table, the energy buzzed around Claire like always. She told stories with flair, exaggerated gestures, laughter that turned heads. She dropped hints about an influencer opportunity she was thinking of pursuing. mentioned spa weekends, boutique finds. No one questioned how this lifestyle fit with the sob stories I'd heard just days ago. I mostly stayed quiet, observing. Then came the first jab. "So, Morgan," Claire said, twirling her wine glass, "still working those 100-hour weeks. Must be lonely in that nice little apartment of yours." I met her gaze. "It's actually quite peaceful." She smiled. "Sure, but you don't miss having, a life. I mean, what's success if you have no one to share it with?" There it was, the classic CLA dig, beautifully wrapped in concern, weaponized under the guise of sisterly love. Before I could reply, she added with a laugh, "But hey, someone's got to fund the family legacy, right?" The table chuckled. Even my father offered a weak smile. I took another sip of wine and thought, "Not tonight, Claire. You're not getting away with it tonight." As the dinner wore on, the dishes arrived in waves. Roasted artichoke bruschetta, creamy polenta with wild mushrooms, grilled sea bass, all carefully chosen by me, but praised as if they'd materialized by magic. Claire was in full performance mode, dominating the conversation with anecdotes about motherhood, home renovations, and her supposed upcoming podcast about balancing chaos and elegance. Then she dropped her favorite bomb of the evening. "So big news." She tapped her glass for attention, the clinking slicing through the chatter. Tyler got offered an academic scholarship, full ride to the junior summer program at Greystone Academy. You know, that elite prep school with the Ivy League pipeline. Gasps of admiration circled the table. "That's incredible." My mother beamed. "Oh, Claire, he's so smart, just like you." Claire laughed modestly. "He works so hard. He's really thriving." I froze. I knew exactly what she was talking about. I'd paid for that summer program, not all of it at once, of course. Claire had approached me in February, said Tyler needed just one summer boost to compete with other kids in his grade. The tuition was steep, $4,500, but she said it would be life-changing for him. "We'll pay you back in a few months," she promised. Tax refunds coming, it never came. And now here she was claiming it as a scholarship. No mention of me, no acknowledgement. Just another story for her highlight reel. I stared down at my half-finished risotto, suddenly queasy. This was the moment it hit me, not as a vague unease, but as a sharp truth. My contributions didn't exist unless Claire could take credit. My efforts were shadows behind her spotlight. My name never made it into the story, even when I funded the entire plot. I blinked hard, pushing back the burn behind my eyes. "Not here, not now." My phone buzzed in my lap. A message from Brian. "Brian Ellis, I'm sorry, I didn't know she planned this." I glanced across the table. He wasn't looking at me, just sipping his drink slowly, his eyes downcast. Guilty. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I didn't reply, "Not yet." Instead, I looked up and studied Claire. She was glowing in the applause, soaking in admiration, arms flailing as she described Tyler's self-discipline and natural leadership. The same kid who played video games for 6 hours a day, unless someone physically removed the console. I thought about all the times I'd offered help without being asked, the tutoring apps I'd subscribed to, the laptop I'd replaced when Tyler cracked the screen and Claire said they couldn't afford a new one. The quiet little line items in my budget labelled family that drained my dreams and fed theirs. And for what? So she could stand here and pretend she did it all herself. Something cracked inside me, not loudly, not publicly, but undeniably, the kind of crack that lets in light. I folded my napkin slowly, deliberately, and set it beside my plate. Then I raised my wine glass and caught Claire's eye. "To Tyler," I said, voice steady. "May he grow up to be exactly who he's meant to be without borrowing someone else's story." There was a flicker of confusion in her eyes just for a second. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her cheeks. My mother clapped. "Hear, hear." Claire nodded, masking whatever registered in that moment. But Brian knew, and I knew, I wouldn't play the invisible hand anymore. The tension at the table had thickened, like a fog no one wanted to acknowledge. Dessert had just arrived, tiramisu and espresso mousse, when Claire struck again, this time with the precision of a blade wrapped in satin. She tilted her head toward me, her tone light but laced with venom. You know, Morgan, I've been thinking, you're amazing. Really, always working, always achieving. But sometimes I wonder, don't you get tired of being just a walking paycheck with no life? The words landed like a slap, the table stilled, forks paused mid-air. My father sipped his wine as if he hadn't heard. My mother's eyes darted between us, her polite smile faltering. Brian stared at his plate. And me? I didn't blink. I set down my spoon with care and looked Claire dead in the eyes. Then, I guess, I said, my voice calm and steady, the paycheck is shutting down tonight. Silence. Claire's smile slipped. Oh, come on. It was a joke. Lighten up. Was it? I asked, because it sounded pretty honest. I mean, she laughed awkwardly. You do work all the time. You've got no husband, no kids, right? I interrupted. But I've got spreadsheets and bills. Your bills, Claire. A pin could have dropped. The tension wasn't fog anymore. It was a storm cloud. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. One click and my banking app opened. Let's do a quick recap, I said, scrolling. March 8th, $2,500 for Tyler's school fees. April the 3rd, $3,000 for your car repairs. May 19th, for now, $200 for rent. June 14th, $4,500 for the summer academy, and those are just the recent ones. Car's face pallid. You're seriously doing this right now? Yes, I said, because you've made it clear I'm not a person to you. I'm an ATM, so let's talk transactions. I turned the screen toward Brian. Total contributions over the past 4 years, $4,072. He blinked. Jesus, Claire snapped. You don't have to make it sound like charity. We always said we'd pay you back. When? I asked. When Brian's hours aren't cut. When the next refund arrives. When you stop buying designer bags. My mother finally spoke. Morgan, honey, maybe this isn't the time. No, I said sharply, eyes still on Claire. This is exactly the time because I'm done. No more quiet help. No more secret rescues. No more pretending you're managing when you're just manipulating. Claire pushed back from the table. This is disgusting. You're humiliating me. You did that yourself, I replied, when you called me a walking paycheck, when you erased my name from every story I helped make possible, when you stood here and pretended Tyler earned something I paid for. Brian looked like he wanted to disappear. My father finally cleared his throat. Morgan, is this all true? I turned the screen toward him. He took the phone, scrolled, his brow furrowing deeper with each transaction. My mother reached for her wine, her hand shaking slightly. Claire stood abruptly. You know what? You're jealous. That's what this is. You've always hated that I have something you don't. Entitlement? I asked. Manipulation. Debt. Claire's lips tightened. Family. That word stung, but I didn't flinch. I used to believe that too, I said quietly, that we were family, that love meant sacrifice, but now I know what we had was conditional, dependent on whether I kept paying. Brian finally stood awkwardly. Claire, maybe we should… Don't, she hissed, eyes blazing. Don't you dare take her side. Brian didn't respond. He just looked at me, truly looked at me and nodded once. I didn't know, he said. I'm sorry. And in that moment, I realized something unexpected. Brian wasn't the villain here. He was just another casualty. Claire's voice rose a full octave, trembling with indignation. You planned this, she accused, jabbing a finger at me. You wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone on Mum and Dad's anniversary, no less. Who does that? Her mascara was starting to smudge, her cheeks blotchy with rising anger. I have always defended you, even when people said you were cold, uptight, robotic. I told them you were just focused. I've always had your back. That last line would have been laughable if it hadn't landed like a slap. She continued, working herself into tears now, her voice shaking. But you just wait for your chance to make me look pathetic in front of our parents, in front of Brian. I didn't have to wait. I said flatly. You gave me plenty of material. My mother stood abruptly. Girls, please, not here! Claire collapsed back into her chair with a dramatic sob, covering her face. The table had gone quiet, diners at nearby tables subtly craning their necks. The server approached, sensed the frost in the air, and wordlessly turned around. I reached for my wineglass, downed the last sip, and placed it neatly on the table. That's when my mother leaned toward me, her voice barely above a whisper. She may overdo it sometimes, she murmured, but Claire means well. She's just emotional. I turned to her slowly, stunned. There it was, the final twist of the knife. Not even now, after everything laid bare, after $4,000 worth of quiet support and public eraser, would my mother hold Claire accountable. Instead, she chose the same refrain I'd heard all my life. Claire is sensitive. Claire means well, and me? I was the one who should have known better. I nodded slowly, the ache in my chest turning to something colder. Thanks for clarifying, I said quietly. Then I stood, every eye turned to me, but I didn't flinch. I looked at my parents, at Brian, at Claire, now sniffling into her napkin. This family, I said evenly, you appearances over integrity. Loyalty only matters when it's silent, and boundaries apparently, those are optional. My father shifted uncomfortably. My mother opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. I've spent years being the problem solver, the helper, the one who has it all together, and all it got me was used, ignored, and labelled as difficult the moment I stopped being convenient. Claire let out a noise, half laugh, half scoff. I ignored it. I paid for the cake, the wine, the room, the gift. But tonight, I'm giving myself something too. I stepped back from the table, slung my purse over my shoulder, and looked at my father. I hope you enjoy the video frame. I loaded it with photos from every year of your marriage, even the ones Claire didn't remember. He looked up at me, jaw slightly slack. I already paid the bill, I added. Happy anniversary. And with that, I turned and walked out. The cold night air hit me like a wave, sharp and clean. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, stunned by my own heartbeat. My legs trembled, adrenaline still crashing through my system. Had I really just done that? Had I really said the things I'd only rehearsed in front of mirrors for years? I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel cruel. I felt free, untethered, and completely, terrifyingly alone. I started walking, no particular direction in mind. The city pulsed around me, horns, streetlights, the faint clinking of glasses from inside cleats. My phone buzzed. I didn't look. Not yet. Tonight I wasn't the fixer, the saviour, the invisible sibling. Tonight I was Morgan Ellis, and I had finally walked away. By the time I made it back to my condo, my phone had buzzed 11 times. Claire, you humiliated me. I hope you're proud of yourself. Mum, please call me. We need to talk about what happened. Dad, Morgan, that wasn't appropriate. Claire, again, you ruined their night, ruined everything. And then the kicker, call me when you're ready to apologise. I didn't respond. Not to any of them. Instead, I dropped my phone on the counter, peeled off my shoes, and stepped into the silence of my living room. No music, no voices, just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the echo of my own breath. I should have felt relief. I'd said what needed to be said. I'd finally drawn the line, but instead I felt like a dam had broken, and now I was standing in the flood. The next morning, the deluge continued. Texts turned into emails, emails into voicemails, voicemails into comments from extended family on Facebook. Word had spread, and of course Claire got to tell her version first. Morgan snapped. Morgan's unstable. Morgan ambushed her sister in public. Morgan made their poor mother cry. It was like I pressed some secret detonate button. And now generations of dysfunction were rising to the surface like oil on water. On Wednesday, I got a knock at my office door. Brian's here, my assistant said, confused. He says it's important. I sighed and stood, gesturing him in. He looked rough, creased shirt, red eyes, hands shoved into his pockets. I didn't know where else to go, he said, voice low. You could have not come to my workplace, I replied, though without venom, just exhaustion. He nodded. Fair, I'm sorry. I motioned toward a chair and he sat. I didn't know Claire was going to do that, he said. The scholarship lie, the jabs. I had no idea what she planned. I stayed quiet, but I do know something else. Something you need to see. He pulled a folded envelope from his jacket and slid it across my desk. I opened it slowly. Inside were photocopies, documents in Claire's handwriting, a loan application, a cosign request, even a signed authorization to access a home equity line tied to my parents' property. Only the signature wasn't theirs. It was a forgery. Claire told the bank she had power of attorney, Brian explained, but I checked. She doesn't. That's your mum's name, forged twice. I looked up. Does she know you have this? He shook his head. Not yet. I found it while cleaning out the filing cabinet. She doesn't know I made copies. And you're telling me why? Because I'm done lying for her. She told me that the money you gave us last year was actually from your mum, that she was just passing it through. My chest tightened. She's been manipulating all of us, Brian continued. I let her. That's on me, but I can't anymore. I have 2 sons. I want them to grow up seeing integrity, not whatever this is. I nodded slowly. Thank you. He exhaled. What are you going to do? I don't know, I said honestly, but I'm going to start by protecting myself. After Brian left, I sat there numb. The forgery changed things. This wasn't just about family drama anymore. This was financial fraud. It could destroy my parents' credit, ruin their retirement. And if Claire had been bold enough to fake their signature, what was next? That night, I finally called Rachel. She answered on the first ring. I was waiting. I told her everything. Brian's visit, the documents, the weight of it all. You need backup, she said firmly, and not just me. You need professional support. I'm booking you a session with someone, Dr. Linda Chen. She's brilliant family systems expert. Used to teach my ethics class. Rachel, no debate, just go. And so 2 days later, I found myself in a quiet office on the 2nd floor of a brownstone downtown. The furniture was soft, the lighting warm, and for the first time in weeks, no one was asking me to explain, to justify, to defend myself. Dr. Chen listened, really listened. And when I finally paused, drained and raw, she said, what you're describing isn't just dysfunction. It's an emotional economy where your value is measured in sacrifice. That's not family. That's servitude. I blinked. I don't want to hate them, I whispered. You don't, she said gently, but you're allowed to be angry at people you love, especially when they hurt you. And with those words, something inside me shifted again. Not a crack this time, but a realignment. I wasn't broken. I was waking up. It took Claire less than 48 hours to launch her campaign. At first it was subtle, vague posts about betrayal and family tension. She shared a filtered photo of her and my mum at brunch captioned, "Some bonds can't be broken no matter who tries." Then came the full assault, stories of how I'd lost control, lashed out, and embarrassed her in public. Hints that I'd been mentally unstable for years, too obsessed with work to understand human emotion. Mutual friends texted me, cousins messaged awkwardly, trying to stay neutral. One aunt unfriended me on Facebook altogether. It was fast, strategic, and effective. She knew exactly how to play the victim. But this time, I wasn't going to stay silent. I sat down one morning, opened my laptop, and typed a brief email addressed to my extended family. No dramatics, no accusations, just clarity. Subject, a family clarification. To those who've reached out with concern, thank you. I'm aware that certain stories have been circulating regarding recent events. Let me be clear. I will not engage in public smear tactics or emotional manipulation. What happened was a culmination of many years of imbalance, disrespect, and financial exploitation. I've chosen to step back, not out of malice, but out of self-respect. I hope we can all remember that every story has multiple sides, and truth doesn't always shout the loudest. Warmly, Morgan. I clicked send and exhaled. It wasn't a battle cry, it was a boundary, and apparently that was enough to shake the hornet's nest. 3 days later, my parents showed up at my door unannounced. I opened it to see my mother clutching her purse like a lifeline, my father looking more tired than I'd ever seen him. "Can we come in?" he asked quietly. I stepped aside. They didn't sit. My mother stayed near the entrance, twisting her wedding ring. "We need to talk," she said. I nodded, bracing. "About Claire. Here it comes." My father spoke next. "We checked the home equity account after what Brian said we had to, and I asked, already knowing she's withdrawn $87,000 over the past 3 years," he said grimly. "Most of it without telling us. Furniture, vacations, tuition, things we thought we were affording on our own." "She forged your name," I said softly. My mother flinched. "We can't prove it legally, but yes, we think so." There was a beat of silence. Then my mother added, "We were hoping you might be able to help just temporarily until we figure things out." I stared at her, at both of them. The goal of it, after everything, after I'd been slandered, discarded, turned into the villain in Claire's carefully curated narrative. And still they came to me, the fixer, the bank, the good daughter. I crossed my arms slowly. "No," I said simply. My mother blinked. "Morgan, I'm sorry," I said, voice firm, "but this isn't my mess to clean anymore. We're not asking for much, just a loan to cover." "No," I repeated, "not again. You want to fix this? Start by facing the truth, not by asking me to patch the holes." My father exhaled. "We didn't know how bad it was." "I believe you," I said, "but denial has a cost, and you're the ones who let her have access in the first place." My mother looked like she might cry. "Mum," I said gently, "this isn't about punishing you, but you have to stop treating this like a misunderstanding. Claire committed financial fraud. She lied repeatedly. And if you keep rescuing her, she'll keep doing it." "But she's still our daughter," she whispered. "And I'm not," I asked quietly. Silence. Then I stepped back and opened the door. "I love you both, but I won't be part of another cover-up." They hesitated. Then slowly they walked out. No hugs, no promises, just the cold, hard edge of truth finally breaking through decades of pretense. And this time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. The house smelled like cinnamon and denial. It was a Saturday afternoon and the blinds in my parents' living room were drawn, casting long stripes of shadow across the hardwood floors. My mother had brewed a pot of chamomile tea, as if warm beverages could soften what was about to unfold. My father paced near the fireplace, arms crossed, the lines on his face deeper than I remembered. Brian sat quietly on the couch, a worn folder in his lap, his fingers tapping nervously against the manila edges. And I stood near the window, arms folded, watching the driveway. Claire was 22 minutes late. When her silver SUV finally pulled up, I could almost feel the shift in the room. My mother stood, smoothing her blouse. My father stopped pacing. Brian sat up straighter. Then the front door burst open. Claire entered like a storm in heels, hair perfectly blown out, lips painted crimson, eyes blazing. "I cannot believe this," she said without a greeting. "An intervention, really. What are we 13-year-olds on daytime television?" "No one's calling it that," my mother said quickly. "I am," Claire snapped, "because it's absurd. Brian said you wanted to talk, not stage a courtroom drama." She shot a glare at him. He didn't meet her eyes. "We need to discuss the home equity withdrawals," my father said, voice clipped, "and the forgery." Claire threw her purse on the armchair. "You're seriously listening to Morgan after she ambushed me in public and turned the whole family against me?" "No one turned anyone," I said evenly. "You did that yourself," she scoffed, arms crossed. "Please, you're just mad that people finally saw how bitter and selfish you are." I ignored the bait. "We're here because this isn't just about emotions anymore. It's about fraud. Alleged fraud," she corrected smugly, "which, by the way, none of you can prove." That's when Brian spoke. Quiet, but firm. Actually, we can. He opened the folder in his lap and pulled out a set of printed documents. These are pre-approval forms from First Horizon Credit. I found them in the filing cabinet last week. He handed the papers to my father, who adjusted his glasses and scanned them slowly, then froze. My mother leaned over his shoulder. "What is this?" she asked, her voice thin. Brian answered. Claire filled out a loan request under Morgan's name, $25,000. She listed Morgan's employer salary, even attached a copy of her driver's license, which she got from our tax folder. I felt my stomach flip. Claire turned pale. "That's a lie," she snapped. My father set the papers down and looked directly at her. "It's your handwriting," he said flatly, "and Morgan's signature forged." Claire's mouth opened, then closed. "I didn't send it," she mumbled. "It wasn't finalized." "But you intended to," I said quietly. "You stole my information. You were going to take money in my name." Her eyes darted toward my mother, then back to Brian. "You told them?" "I had to," he said simply. "You crossed a line I can't follow you across." The room held its breath. Then suddenly the silence broke with a single thunderous sound. My father slammed his palm against the table, rattling the teacups. "Enough!" He barked. We all jumped. He stood straight back and stared down at Claire. "You've lied, you've stolen, you've used everyone in this room, and now you're playing the victim." Claire's face crumpled. "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did," he cut in, "because every time we let it go, you did it again. And we let you." My mother began to cry softly. Her head bowed. I looked at them, at all of them, and felt a strange blend of sadness and clarity. This wasn't justice, it wasn't revenge. It was truth finally spoken, and it had taken a forged signature to drag it out. My father sat back down with deliberate slowness. The muscles in his jaw cheesed or tightening. My mother dabbed at her eyes, avoiding Claire's gaze. The silence after his outburst was deep and final, like a door had just closed, and no one was quite sure what room they were now in. Claire stood near the armchair, arms folded, face flushed with embarrassment and fury. "We can't just pretend this didn't happen," my father said quietly, voice low but firm. "There has to be consequences." Claire let out a bitter laugh. "Consequences. What do you want, Dad? Me in handcuffs? A court date?" "No," he said. "We want you to take responsibility." He looked toward my mother, who nodded slowly, her eyes red. "We've decided," she said gently. "You need to sell the house, downsize. Use the proceeds to start repaying the money you took." Claire stiffened. "You're serious? You've been living beyond your means for years," my mother continued. "You used Morgan's money, our retirement, forged our names. It can't continue." And my father added, "We want it in writing, a repayment plan, a real one, with dates, numbers, signatures." Claire turned to Brian, but he didn't come to her defense. He simply stared at the folder still lying open on the table. "Wow," she whispered. This is rich." She looked at me, something dark flickering behind her eyes. "You must be loving this," I didn't respond. She stepped closer, finger trembling as she pointed at me. "You've always had it easy. The good grades, the job, the respect. Mum and Dad never worried about you because they thought you were perfect. And me? I was the screw-up, the emotional one, the burden. You chose chaos," I said calmly. "I didn't create it for you." "You think I wanted to be this way?" she shouted. "You think I enjoyed being the failure? You got praise for breathing." I had to scream just to be heard. Something cracked in her voice. Her face twisted, not just with anger, but something older, deeper. "I hated you," she whispered, "for years because you never had to fight for attention. You walked through life like you belonged and everyone just accepted it. Even when they ignored you, you still had their respect. Me, I had to perform for crumbs." Her lip trembled, and I kept thinking, maybe if I just got ahead just once, they'd finally see me. Not you, me. She collapsed into the chair, breath shallow. Then, in a voice so quiet I almost missed it, she said, "The cat never ran away." Everyone froze. What? My mother asked. Claire's eyes didn't lift. When we were kids, Mighty, I told you Morgan left the door open, but she didn't. I locked the cat in the garage on purpose, hid her in a box for a few hours just so you'd blame Morgan. The room spun slightly. You were getting straight A's, Claire continued. And I'd just gotten kicked out of dance camp. I was so angry. And when you came home that day, smiling like everything was fine, I just snapped. I wanted you to feel what I felt, so I made you the villain. I stood there, numb. Decades of tension, of unspoken wounds, of childhood scars that shaped our entire dynamic, anchored to a lie about a missing cat. That's the saddest confession I've ever heard, I said softly. Claire looked up, startled. I'm not even angry, I added. I'm just sorry that you believed hurting me was your only way to feel seen. The words hung in the air. No one moved. Eventually, my father broke the silence. You'll draft the repayment plan, he said to Claire, and you'll start therapy. Real therapy, not excuses. If you want any future relationship with us, this is where it starts. Claire nodded slowly. I turned to leave, needing air, needing space. But before I walked out the door, I paused. For what it's worth, I said over my shoulder, I would have shared the spotlight if you'd just asked. 6 months passed, not quietly, but steadily, like a slow tide pulling chaos back out to sea, leaving behind fragments of a new shoreline. Claire sold the house finally. After much resistance, several failed listings, and a tense negotiation, she and Brian moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet part of town. Gone were granite countertops and oversized walk-in closets. Their new space was functional, a little cramped, but clean. Honest, I didn't visit, not yet. But I saw photos on social media. Claire redecorating with thrift store finds. The boys drawing on a whiteboard she'd picked up second-hand. Brian installing shelves himself. And there was something humbling in those images. They weren't curated for likes. They were real. Claire started therapy. I didn't ask for proof, but my mother mentioned it once offhandedly, like she was testing the air. She's seeing someone named Marlene says it's helping. She doesn't cry every day anymore. Small steps. I kept my distance. I wasn't ready to dive back into any relationship that required forgiveness before true change. But I saw the boys a few times, short visits to the park or quick ice cream runs. They didn't know the details, only that Aunt Morgan had been busy, and now she had more time. And Claire, to her credit, respected the space. She began sending small payments to our parents, 300 here, 500 there. It wasn't much, not compared to what she owed, but it was consistent. My father logged each one in a spreadsheet, no longer pretending this was just family helping family. It was restitution. I was healing too, just differently. Dr. Chen and I continued to meet weekly. We unpacked not just Clara's betrayals, but the quieter ways I'd let myself be minimized. How I'd clung to usefulness because I didn't believe I was lovable without it. And then there was Michael. I met him through a work project, a collaboration between my firm and an architecture non-profit. He was tall, thoughtful, and had this steady way of speaking that made even his silence feel anchored. Our first date was at a bookstore cafe. He asked about my favorite author. I said I didn't have one. Too many to choose from? He asked. No, I said honestly. I've been too busy proving my worth to stop and read for fun. He didn't flinch. Instead, he said, then maybe I'll help you make time. We started slowly. Walks after work, phone calls, meals we actually cooked together instead of ordering in. For once, I didn't feel like I had to perform competence or over-explain my past. Michael listened, and when I finally told him the full story about Claire, the money, the dinner, he just held my hand and said, You stood up for yourself. That's the bravest thing you can do. It was simple, but no one had ever said it quite like that. And it hit me. My value wasn't in what I gave or what I fixed or how much I sacrificed. It was in how I loved and how I allowed myself to be loved in return. That realization changed everything. I didn't rush to reconcile with Claire, but I stopped bracing for her to hurt me again. I let the possibility of peace exist, not as a demand, but as an open door she'd have to walk through herself. It was a small restaurant tucked between a laundromat and a hardware store. A family-owned Italian place with cracked tile floors, mismatched salt shakers, and a chalkboard menu that hadn't been updated since 1998. And yet, something about it felt more fitting for our family than the opulence of Cleats ever had. This was where we were gathering for my parents' belated anniversary, 6 months after the explosion, 6 months after the reckoning. No one wore sequins, no one ordered imported wine. The dress code was jeans and comfort. And instead of a prefix menu, we argued over whether the meatballs were better than the lasagna. And for once, I wasn't hosting. Claire had organised it. She sent out the invites, made the reservation, called to confirm twice, paid the deposit. I arrived with Michael, who immediately struck up conversation with my father about woodworking, as if they'd known each other for years. My mother greeted me with a tired but gentle smile, one that felt less strained than usual. Claire arrived last, no dramatic entrance this time. She wore a navy sweater, minimal makeup, and a nervous expression. She tried to hide behind a plate of garlic bread. Dinner started awkwardly. Small talk filled the spaces where tension used to live. Claire talked about the boys' new school. Brian mentioned his recent promotion. I shared a brief story about a new app my team had just launched. But eventually there was a lull, the kind of pause that invites a shift. Claire cleared her throat. I want to say something. All eyes turned to her. She looked at my parents first, then at Brian, then finally at me. I was wrong. The words fell into the quiet like a stone into still water. I was wrong about a lot of things, about money, about Morgan, about what I thought I deserved. My mother's hand trembled slightly on her fork. I let jealousy run my life. Claire continued. I lied, I manipulated. I blamed Morgan for things that were my own doing, and I used all of you. She looked down at her napkin. I'm not proud of who I've been, but I'm trying to be better. No one said a word, then she looked back at me. I'm sorry, she said. I know I can't undo what I've done, and I'm not asking you to forget it. But I want to try again, as your sister, not your burden, not your rival, just me. Her voice cracked. I hope that's still worth something. The table stayed silent. Everyone waited for me. I set down my glass. I forgive you, I said quietly, but I won't forget. Claire nodded. I don't expect you to. We both sat there for a moment, neither friends, not yet, but no longer enemies. There was something new between us, honesty. The conversation shifted slowly back to pasta and birthdays and weekend plans. No one tried to force the moment to stretch longer than it needed, and maybe that's what made it work. After dessert, as we stood by the door waiting for the check, my mother came up beside me. She didn't say anything, just reached for my hand. I looked at her confused. Then she pulled me gently into a hug. Not stiff, not polite, but real and long. The kind of embrace I hadn't felt since I was 10 years old. The kind of touch that says, I see you now, she whispered. I'm sorry it took so long. I closed my eyes, feeling her heartbeat against mine. It's okay, I whispered back. I'm here now. Outside, the air was cool. Michael put his arm around me as we walked to the car. How do you feel? He asked. I thought for a moment, like something that's been twisted for years just finally exhaled. He smiled, and so did Soa.